Without further ado, friends, let's go ahead and begin our beautiful practice and exploration on the cultivation of love. And I'd like to invite our chime to sing as a little token, a little bell of mindfulness to really act as an invitation to bring us into this practice. Welcome, everyone. Especially those of you who are new to the Spokane Sangha, just an extra warm welcome. I'm so happy to practice with you today. I'd like to share with you a sentiment of metta, of loving kindness, as a way to set the intention for this beautiful practice today. Oh, I love this one. This one was painted by our wonderful friend Lynn, who lives in Montana. I don't think she's here today, but she sent this to me as a card. And just so you know, if you ever send me artwork, I will cut it up in tiny little pieces, unless you tell me otherwise. And then I write sentiments of metta on the back. This one reads, "May kindness be how you smile. May kindness be how you smile." What a thought. So, friends, I invite you to settle into the body. Maybe take a quick look-see around the body. Notice any tension that might be asking for a little bit of care and nurturance. Maybe the body is needing to lie down. Give yourself permission to do so. Maybe the body feels empowered to sit in a noble Zen posture, straight, strong spine, soft belly, legs crossed. Maybe the body is saying, no, stillness is not for me right now. You know, what a wonderful opportunity to simply invite that to be your practice. Invite it to be perfect and allow the body to move. And maybe you need to wiggle and shake whatever's been attached to you today. You know, maybe getting the heart rate up as my voice is in the background. Again, allow this to be your practice. Today we're going to talk about cultivating the conditions of love. And we're going to use a couple of very specific tools. I call them instruments of peace. Love is a quality that, when in action, creates peace. One of the instruments of peace is something very popular in the Buddhist practice. I mentioned it yesterday, and I've shared about it many times over the years. Something called the 8 worldly winds, or the 8 worldly concerns. These are 4 pairs of opposites that drive human nature. And we can really distill our joy and our suffering related to some aspect of one of these 8 qualities. That's the first instrument of peace that I'm going to talk about. And the second is a spiritual practice I call pointing the finger. And that's sort of embedded into the 8 worldly wind practice. So these 4 pairs of opposites, I'd like to name them, and then I'd like to go into some detail. And I'm going to frame them around issues of recovery. substance use and misuse, addiction, habit, energy, confusion, and freedom. The four pairs of opposites are gain and loss, pleasure and pain, fame and disgrace, praise and blame. The most fundamental teaching of the Dharma is that all beings want to be happy, want to have joy, experience pleasant things, and do not want to suffer or be in pain. In other words, when we experience pain or suffering or confusion, triggers, almost automatically, something in ourselves, something in the mind, something in the heart, immediately grasps for something that brings us pleasure. Heck, this is the roots of habit energy, isn't it? Something doesn't feel good. Somebody hurt our feelings. Somebody hurt our bodies. Some situation happened that was beyond our capacity to cope, and it feels bad. And so we go for things that will help us feel soothed and comforted. And friends, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing. It is a very human thing to do. When I Tawanda, which is the name of my weed whacker, when I Tawanda around my farm, it is constantly nicking me with various stones and pebbles and things like that, bruises even, and it hurts. And my reaction to this isn't to pummel where I've already been bruised or to cut a nick in my skin even deeper. I do things that will bring ease and relief. It's perfectly normal. The issue is when our seeking pleasure to avoid pain is disharmonious and out of balance. In recovery and in substance use disorder, when we're feeling bad and we use substances, what do we gain from that? We gain relief, temporary as it is. And when that relief goes away, and it feels good, and when it goes away, we experience loss. And what happens? That loss is synonymous with grief, and grief doesn't feel good. And on the journey of recovery, we're reminded of that. those substances that we use that at one time were soothing and served a purpose, but then they got distorted and inflated and out of control. And what acted as something pleasurable and relief giving became a source of pain. Related to grief, related to regret, related to loss. Here's the amazing thing about recovery, though. The resilient spirit to keep going. Even in light of recurrences, even in light of multiple treatment stints, even when there has been harm to others and destruction to our relationships, people keep going and they keep searching for recovery and they keep trying on new ways to alleviate the suffering and to find freedom from this habit energy. If this is you, you are extraordinary. It's amazing, the level of resilience within you. And that praise is hard to accept because of two things. One is I have a narrative in my mind that I better not accept too much praise because I don't want to become arrogant. Or I've got a narrative that reminds me and stirs up so much insecurity that I'm unworthy of the praise. So I deflect the praise. I don't let it in. But by not allowing, by denying the truth of this praise, I start to begin the habit energy of blame. I don't want to let it in. I blame myself. They don't really know me. If they really knew me, they would never say that. I blame other people. I get blamed. There are people in our society who are very hesitant to be encouraging of their loved ones in recovery for fear of being too enabling, too positive. And should a recurrence happen, they're the first to blame them. So this pair of opposite, you can't win. It's a really difficult paradox to work with. And how we work with it is we try to learn to stay neutral, and that's where the pointing finger practice comes in, which I'll talk about in a moment. Finally, we end up with the final two worldly winds, which is fame and disgrace. When we're doing well, we feel popular, we feel seen, we're on our game. And when we're not, we feel disgraced. And in fact, we often are. And a lot of this fame and disgrace practice has to do with our propensity, particularly in this culture, of mythologizing people. We elevate people to levels of extremes, and then for some kind of distorted, perverted reason, we love to watch their fall. We elevate people to epic proportion without their permission. And then when they have the audacity to be human, we're aghast. And we do this to ourselves all the time. Many of you have already heard the pointing finger practice, and you may not have known that it's actually a practice. It's an incredible instrument of peace. And the pointing finger practice has to do with when you point the finger at someone else. Maybe you're blaming them. Maybe you're even praising them, for example, and you point your finger and you're like, wow, you're so good. But look at the three fingers pointing back at you. That's where the heart of the practice is. And the three fingers pointing back at you represent three different things. The conditions of the situation, unresolved afflicted mind states and heart states, and the invitation to keep practicing. So when you're praising someone, for example, and you find yourself elevating someone, well, they're so advanced, they're so much better than me, they're farther along in their recovery, they appear more Buddha-y than me. Whatever it is, whatever story you're creating and pointing a finger. Get curious. What are the conditions that are motivating your thoughts? What are the conditions motivating the praise? Is this someone actually worthy of your esteem? Is your esteem sincere? Does your praise for this person come with a diminishment of yourself? What do they have that you don't have? And that's the afflicted mind state. There's something, when we're praising other people, there's some inflation, some distortion that says they have something I do not. It might be true, and it certainly isn't the whole truth. And because it isn't the whole truth, then we can ask, what else is there? And that is the third finger. It's simply just practicing. What else is there? Because this person I'm praising and I'm elevating, in actual fact, is just like me. And I am just like them. When you're blaming someone, or when you are the person being blamed, and you feel that sharp edge of a finger pointing at you, you did this. And it feels aggressive and hostile and disapproving. All of it could be true. And still the whole truth of a finger pointing at you with all of that aversion and conflict is also pointing three fingers back at another person, and they're not looking at it, more than likely. But you are. So you can pick up that blame and start blaming yourself. And ask yourself, what are the conditions of this blame? What is my afflicted mind that is adding to the confusion, that's not allowing me to see this clearly? How can I engage in a practice? And the practice is nothing more than allowing yourself a little bit of time to think about it, to be curious about it, to wonder, to allow a person space to be blaming, to allow yourself some space to be blamed, and in that space to create a practice looking at the conditions. The same can be true when we're experiencing pleasure or pain, gain or loss. We can point a finger at what doesn't feel good. This does not feel good, I hate this, I can't deal with this, I don't want this. 3 fingers pointing back. What are the conditions of this? Why am I convinced that I have so little power and so little resilience? Because I can deal with this. I am dealing with this. I sit with discomfort all the time. I'm amazing. There's my practice. All of this together, friends, is an extraordinary act and expression of love. Why? Because we are putting down the weapons of war, the weapons of destruction, confusion, diminishment, judgment, denial, hustle. And we are replacing those weapons with instruments of peace that are bound by curiosity, wonder, stillness, presence, acceptance. What an extraordinary act of love for yourself, and by extension, everyone you encounter. One of the mantras when I practice the finger pointing meditation is, I tell myself, I'm pointing a finger at you and I see myself. And I'll be honest, friends, there are many, many times that I don't like what I see. It's a shit show dumpster fire, and there it is. That's me. And there are other times I point a finger, and what's pointing back at me is a wonder and a marvel. That's me too. And it's also you. And so we'll end there with a dedication of merit. Oh, and I just want to say this one thing. And Maggie, it relates to what you shared in the chat, which is having been told repeatedly in a highly stigmatizing way that a recurrence is a reflection of one's lack of desire to actually quit. It's such a blaming and shaming approach. It really reflects an unpracticed mind. And I'm so sorry for anybody who has had to endure that and have their feelings hurt in that way. It is simply untrue and a distortion. This practice is a reminder, friends, and we dedicate it to ourselves. We dedicate it to all of our friends who couldn't be here today. We dedicate it to anybody who is in their apartment hiding, in their car, on the street, in jail, in prison, in the hospital, who hasn't found their way to liberation. You have never been, nor shall you ever be, a mistake in the eyes of what's divine. Thank you for your practice today, for being such a reliable and dependable source of inspiration and light. You certainly light my fires. Have a wonderful day, beautiful weekend. We'll see you next time. Namaste.